I want to welcome everybody to the Gateway Spotlight, a show designed to highlight diverse perspectives, emerging trends, and innovative thinkers in international higher education. I'm your host, Brooke Roberts, a 20-year veteran in the field and founder of Inside Study Abroad. I currently serve as Senior Vice President of Marketing and Global Engagement at VIA TRM, which is the leading modern software solution powering university global operations. So welcome everybody to this live recording of the show. So today we're going to be talking about integrated degree programs and how they can be a game changer in international student recruitment. And I do not feel for international student recruitment professionals right now. I am sure it is a very challenging time, especially those of you in the United States. As competition for international students accelerates worldwide, institutions are under growing pressure to deliver more accessible, career-relevant, and cost-effective degree programs. Integrated degree programs are emerging as a powerful strategy. They blend academic preparation, holistic student support, and industry alignment across borders to boost enrollment and drive student success. So today, we're exploring how Edept is building a model designed to meet this global moment. Thank you to our panelists. I'm going to introduce you all real quick, and then we will jump into the topic. So we have Gaurav Bhatia. He's CEO and co-founder of Edept. We have Puneet Saxena, also co-founder of Edept, and George Kasenga, a Gateway affiliate and VP for enrollment management at William Patterson University of New Jersey. That was a mouthful. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Brooke.
Thank you, Brooke. Jumping in right away, I want to talk about just what is an integrated degree program. Let's sort of set the stage for everyone so we're all talking about the same thing, and specifically how, Gaurav, this question is for you, how Edept is approaching this type of model.
Sure. So I think, an integrated degree program model, in a way, is our attempt to bring in a model that's curated in keeping in line. Let's say if you're working with the US universities, then we look at designing it in a way that it integrates right from the starting point, right? You look at the curriculum that's being offered in the US, we take that as the baseline. We work with the Indian universities to use that as the baseline. We get the students to do the first couple of years, which, let's say, an undergraduate program where the students are doing, let's say, 2 years in India and then graduating, in the US, or, for example, completing their master's in the US. And then that standpoint, for example, you will still use the same baseline, design the program together, and then essentially also use the faculty on both sides to take, for example, in the first couple of years that are kind of being offered in India, you also have the US faculty members taking up some credits there, right? So in a way, it's truly integrated. We also look at not only designing the program jointly and delivering it jointly, but also from an admission standpoint, from a support standpoint, the entire academic journey is done together. So to that extent, this is a model where, both partners, essentially, both universities come together and not only look at the delivery of the program, but also the administration of that particular program is kind of thought through and delivered jointly. So it's quite transparent to that extent. So I think that's essentially how I look at integrated degree program and how it could be different from the existing models out there.
Great, thank you. I want to dive a little bit further into this because obviously some people might be thinking, this sounds very similar to something I've heard of before, a pathway program, quote unquote. And so over the last decade or so, we've seen a lot of organizations come and go who've promised this great pathway program experience. I'm curious, Puneet, what is different about an integrated degree program versus a traditional pathway program that people might have seen in the past?
Sure. So I think, as Gaurav mentioned, I think our integrated program is truly integrated in the sense that we design the program together. The partner institutions design the program together. It's thought through in a way that a student who enters the program looks at it not as two different programs per se, but entering into a program where they start off in, let's say, India, graduate in US. Some of the credits could be done in a way that, the US institution can bring some of the credits forward. They could be done while the student is here. We could do a lot of training around the cultural aspects. We can do a lot of trainings around what they would expect when they make that transition to US. So essentially, it's a model that is in a way, you're bringing that program into India from a standpoint of being one program and not two disparate programs which are sort of fused together in the middle. I think that's, from a vision perspective, that's what a integrated program does.
Yeah, I agree. When we had our initial conversation to prepare for this, what I really thought was interesting about this that I saw was a value add was kind of the cohort model approach where students sort of have each other while they're in India. They can know the other students who are also on this journey together. And then obviously you all can provide that support, whether it's they're nervous or they can't figure out how to get calculus 5 or what have you going on. And I think that's really great because I know from the receiving end on the US side specifically, it can get very challenging navigating all the different requirements of the different institutions. And we need someone to kind of translate all those things for us so we can sort of say, okay, I get it. You can then allow more students because you're not overwhelmed by the admin of it all. Yeah. So George, I know that you're working closely with these fellas to talk about integrated degree programs across the United States specifically. And I'm wondering, as you've had these conversations with administrators, and I would love to know who you're talking to from the institutions, what is attractive of this of EDEPT's model to these institutions? What makes them excited? What's the benefit for them?
Well, I think, right now I'm in a position, I'm exiting. I'm in my last year of the leadership stream of NAFSA's IEM knowledge community. I'm a past president of AIRC and still stay involved there and in a number of professional organizations. So I'm having active conversations about, first it was post-pandemic, then it's people worrying about different fluctuations in geopolitical events, all these kinds of things. So these are frequent conversations that I'm having. One of the things that makes ADEPT's model innovative and something maybe we haven't seen quite before is the way that it is cost effective. It is truly at no cost to the institution. There are not commissions tied to when a student transitions from crosses borders or switches where their location is. There isn't an expectation of an investment from the U.S. institution of staff or buildings or infrastructure. Those were common elements of what had been or might even still be called pathway programs in other instances. But all the different professional organizations frequently go through an exercise of defining these terms because they do mean slightly different things to different people at different times. But that's where the transparency element comes in and why I'm thrilled we're having a conversation like this today because it allows us to talk about what does an integrated program look like and mean with ADEPT. But it's another theme that I recognize is happening a lot lately. Most of our U.S. universities want interesting and a variety of perspectives in the classroom. And we might even talk about the diversity in our classroom. Maybe we don't talk so much about our diversity in the classroom, but diversity does not equate to global perspectives in the classroom. And this is a way to look at what the institution's goals are and align what's happening with the recruitment efforts to make sure there's a variety of those perspectives in the classroom to help both our local students as well as the international students that we might be bringing from abroad. One of the things that's also a real value of having a partner like ADEPT in this model is that many of these programs, however they were framed at an institution in the past, they rise and fall on having a champion. Often it's a faculty champion who's there to see a program through. But with staff changing and faculty changes, I've watched really strong programs fade because the champion was no longer there or had been given other priorities. With this type of model, and you have a partnership with ADEPT, they will serve as that champion who then does all the negotiations and seeing things through on both sides. So there are a lot of positive attributes.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, in the startup world, we'd say you need to have a deep bench. So you need to have all those backups. It's such a U.S. Baseball reference, but I think that's really important. A lot of institutions, we do this a lot. I know I've seen it happen in institutions I've worked in where, that one person had their pet project and it was the thing they started, it's their baby. But for whatever reason, it goes away and nobody else either knows how to run it, doesn't know how to run it, or they're just not as interested in it in some way. So hear you, George,
One of the other
1000%.
things I hear a lot about that I really appreciate Adept being able to address is in these programs, having the transparency and the intention up front so that certain gen ed requirements can be there. Things are built in on the front end so that truly the timeline and expectation for graduation matches what a student's expectation is going to be, not finding out once they get to the US partner that they have to do a slew of courses that are different from the major. A lot of that can be worked out up front or should be worked out up front in these partnerships.
Yeah, I imagine that general education requirements in the United States institutions is probably the Achilles heel of integrated degree programs, because that's the one thing that you probably have to facilitate, especially on the home country side, to make sure the students are ready to go when they arrive in the United States. Speaking of that, Puneet, I wanted to talk to you about when you all are looking for institutional partners and programs that you could partner with, how do you identify those? What's the ideal partner for you? What do they need to have in place or want to put in place to make this a good relationship?
Yeah, sure. So what we look for is alignment in the mission first, right? So not just the metrics, because the best partners that we see out there are the ones that are looking for that growth strategy, are willing to commit to the innovation that we're trying to bring in, and not necessarily using it as a checkbox exercise. So essentially, when we look at it from the India side, for example, we look for partnering up with highly ranked institutions. These institutions would be academically rigorous. You'll have good quality students. They'll be plugged into the industry, so the curriculum will be high grade. Similarly, when we look at it from the US side, we would prioritize regionally accredited institutions that are open to this kind of an innovation, and they're committed to student transitions. So essentially, we want to look for partners who will walk with us the whole mile, right? Instead of as we were talking about, having two separate partners with each of them doing their part, but essentially, from the get-go, committing to the vision, coming in and aligning, things such as credit loads, coming in and aligning things such as even faculty input, and essentially then, completing that journey or creating that journey for the student together. I think that's what we're looking for in partners either side.
Mm-hmm. I want to add one thing I thought was really interesting when we met ahead of this. So I have insider knowledge here, but I remember you talking, Puneet, in depth about the career-focused nature of the program model and the academic programs you're most excited to explore with institutions to make the integrated degree programs. I don't know if George or Puneet, you want to talk a little bit more about that academic, I guess, criteria you guys are looking for as well.
Well, I think the two elements about that stand out to me. One, as the university, you're hearing you talk a minute ago about what you're looking for in that partnership. From the institution, what I'm looking for is the ability to build long-term relationships, not just with the students, but with a partner who is in country, who's regularly able to provide me with meaningful market and business intelligence about the nature of our program, but the area. It's just incredibly valuable. Coming out of the pandemic, the partners or the institutions who I saw bounce back fastest were those who not just had relationships and long-term relationships, but ones that they continued to nurture as best we could through that pandemic period. And this is an opportunity to begin one of those types of relationships that is long-term. And the reason that long-term matters, at least from my perspective as an enrollment manager, it puts me in a position to optimize my enrollment and retention. And understanding if I have a class that I think is growing or shrinking, I can reach out to some of my partners and say, hey, do you think we could get 5 or 10 more students into this program? Or, hey, we may need a year where we need a few less. Or we're looking at just the academic rigor. How are these students succeeding? Are they persisting the way we expected? Do we need to go back to our partner in the home country and talk a little bit about the curriculum? This is where, as enrollment managers and as offices of global engagement or international affairs, we're partnering with academic affairs to make sure that all of these decisions are grounded in student success measures. And that's what I think both partners are looking for in terms of the U.S. institution and what Adept is doing.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of things to add. We do run some programs domestically, and what we do well is we work with industry as well. So, for example, we would pick up that particular domain and say, what are the industries looking for? If there are certain certifications to be brought in, we bring that in. If there are other bits that are needed to be added, we do that as well. The other thing that's interesting about this is we don't necessarily, I mean, of course, tech, we do look at tech, but there are domains outside of tech where there's a skill shortage, right? So we're looking at things such as psychology, we're looking at things such as construction, which are not necessarily the first things that come to somebody's mind, but there's equally a demand for those kind of roles. And I think that's not been done before. So we're looking at a wide spectrum of those kind of domains as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Well, I want to move on a little bit, and you guys have teed up all of these questions so beautifully. I mean, it's like we practiced this. So, thank you. So, Gaurav, I want to hear from you. So, when you focus on one thing, one outcome you want to achieve, or one value, sometimes it's maybe at the detriment to another. So, I'm curious how you're expanding access through a cost-effective model, but still maintaining that academic quality and the transparency that you promise to institutions. Because once you get to scale and start working with tens of thousands of students, it's a lot harder to lean into the quality, the QA of it all, or the transparency of it all.
I think that's a very good question. But if one goes back to the building blocks and the fundamentals of what we're building, for us, everything starts with career outcomes for the student. So we keep that first and we say, all right, if the student's getting into this program and it's an integrated program, what's the outcome that we want for the student, right? And one of the things that we want for the student is that if the student were, for example, to graduate in construction management, that he should be able to work in industry at the end of it. Now, how do we ensure that the program that we're offering, both in India and subsequently when the student comes down to the US, is high quality that leads to those outcomes, right? Now, if you compromise on the quality, then you're never going to get there because you might have hundreds of students into the program, but it's sorry for the lack of a better word, but if you have in computer science, there's a basic concept called garbage in, garbage out, right? You essentially if you essentially don't have high quality students coming in, then you're essentially going to have poor outcomes at the end of it, right? And then it's a collective failure for both institutions. So for us, the start in itself is the most important piece. How are we ensuring that the quality of students that are being brought into the program, not only are these students academically bright and they have the wherewithal to complete the program, right? But in addition to that, they also have the financial capabilities to pay for the program. Because what we've seen, in my previous experience for almost a decade and a half now in higher education, one of the things that I've realized is if you don't have the right checkpoints in the beginning, you run into poor outcomes later. And I think and I think from our standpoint, we're kind of building, the building blocks in itself kind of look at these pieces right in the beginning. So if they don't have the financial wherewithal, they don't get into the program. If they don't have the academic merit to make it to the program, they won't enter the program, right? And from that standpoint, it's also a joint exercise. So we'll follow, or if we have to ensure that the students getting into the program are jointly interviewed by both universities, we're happy to do that. Because at the end of it, what we want is the students who are getting into the program eventually are able to qualify and make it year after year, right? They don't exit the program midway. They're able to put in the effort to qualify within the program. I think from that standpoint, we're selective. And so the idea is you want to widen the gate, you don't want to lower the bar. And I think that to me essentially is how we're looking at this being a cost-effective model, yet, not compromising on the academic quality of the program.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to go a little off script here, George, and I want to address, because I was having this question in my head as we were talking. Somebody submitted on Athanase. Thank you for submitting a question. And they asked, could you give an example or a sample of what this actually looks like? What's the nuts and bolts of how this would actually look in real life?
Well, sure. I think one part of that answer is going to be that there's a lot of tailoring, there's a lot of customization there. And if for anyone who is interested in learning what Adept could do for you, I would encourage you to visit the Gateway site that we'll post in a minute and complete the inquiry form so we can have a one-on-one conversation with you and talk about what it's going to mean at your own institution. But the intention around the design of the curriculum is we have partner schools abroad who are interested and have motivation of partnering with institutions in the U.S. They want to strengthen their curriculum, and in doing so, work with us to make sure that gen eds are being met, but that the courses, whether we're talking about construction management or we might be talking about cybersecurity or psychology, the disciplines vary. So it's not going to be one program that fits everybody. It's going to be talking about what does your institution need so we can build a strong integrated program. So those students, when they arrive to your campus, not only have the necessary academic preparation to do the advanced level coursework at your university, but they've also met some gen ed requirements, so they have the reasonable expectation of graduating in a timely manner. That academic success and that retention and persistence set of goals is pertinent to all of these discussions. But to the point, it's let's have a one-on-one meeting where we can talk about your institution. But if you've never done a 2+2 or an articulation agreement, there's a whole exercise where we map out the courses at both institutions and then align them so that we know there's no mystery for the student about how their courses are going to transfer and the fact that they are going to be accepted by the receiving institution in the US. But each of these ends up being tailored to the institutions involved.
Yeah. That's the hardest thing about higher education when you ask these kinds of questions, because it depends. And because all of our institutions are special, unique unicorns, which I love us for that, but it's also very challenging to get like a standardized process.
And that's the investment from the US institution, is there's an investment of time to do the articulation, start mapping the classes, and not just the courses that the institution abroad is offering, but then that discussion about what do we need them to offer? What part of their curriculum do we need them to strengthen or augment or change so that it is a fit for us? Those are the ties that bind, that turn it into a long-lasting, enduring relationship. And those are great conversations to have, but I have found in my time as a senior international officer, doing some of the legwork in our international offices or even in the international admissions team to make some proposals or estimates makes it a lot faster for our faculty in the US to approve something rather than just putting something in their lap that they have to try and figure out themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we're already getting some great questions in the chat, so I want to make sure we have time to get to these. And if anybody else has any burning questions, please add them to the Q&A area, and we'll definitely dive into this, because I think this is a really meaty but important questions people are posing. So some people are sort of asking, like, in the general idea is, why adept? Why use adept specifically, or your type of organization? And why wouldn't they just do a dual degree, joint degree directly with the university? Why do they need the third party?
Sure. So I think what we have realized and what we have heard, from a lot of institutions in the US is that, we do a lot of MOUs, but they don't translate into actual students coming over. In fact, in India, honestly, there are, ranking points given to institutions for foreign affiliations. I don't think they look at specifically how many students are going through, but, how many agreements are done. And so you'll find institutions with 25, tie-ups, international tie-ups, but not many students going abroad, not many, programs, international programs being there. Essentially, what we feel happens is every institution has a lot of work to do on their side, right? And they're looking at what is core to them. So for an Indian institution running their own domestic courses, the regulatory norms and so on and so forth. Similarly for the US institution, and I think where adept really comes in is essentially comes together as almost like a program manager, binds the two institutions together, does the legwork of essentially, doing the mappings, doing other things, the real core integration bit in a timely manner, and then holding that together in the middle, right? Mm-hmm. And so, what you'll realize is we would like to have a few partnerships or a few programs going, but then doing them very well, as opposed to having a lot of programs with very few students making through. We want to sort of set that foundation with a few good partnership opportunities, and sort of then, looking at it and trying to sort of see if we can make them into a substantive thing. I think from that perspective, yes, we are standing in the middle, but I think we're standing in the middle to sort of do the grunt work, which a lot of a lot of failures happen when essentially that amount of work sort of comes in. Just the other point that I'd like to add is because we work on the domestic market, we work with industry. So, what you were talking about earlier, recognizing from an Indian institution where the curriculum needs to be, sorted, I think what needs to be added and so on and so forth. We already do that in India, for example, by bringing in industry to, beef up the curriculum to industry standards. So I think some of what we're already doing is very relevant to, this particular business as well. And I think that's where probably our utility comes in.
For me, I draw a parallel to sort of the late 90s, or sorry, late 80s, early 90s, when third-party providers really started to prop up in mass on the study abroad side. Because previous to that, institutions were relying on direct exchange agreements or direct enroll arrangements, and the more demand there was for study abroad in different destinations, the more an office had to manage in terms of every single one of those pieces, every single transfer from every institution, every different start date, like all the nitty-gritty that everyone here is very aware of. And third-party providers became the solution for give us a little bit of breather so that somebody can facilitate the arrangement, the go-between. Now we could argue the benefits, cons to that in another session for sure, but it did help grow study abroad quite a bit through the 90s and early 2000s. So to me, this kind of model feels akin to that kind of evolution. If universities want to scale their ability to receive students, especially institutions who maybe don't have as much funding, especially right now, that they can have these types of relationships where they can kind of keep the flow of students potentially coming. There's several other questions here, but I want to be mindful. We have plenty of time, so I'll save my question till the end. Somebody asked a very specific question about waiving admission requirements like the GRE, GMAT, English proficiency. How do you all handle that?
So the first part is that you can't waive out English proficiency. If that's not the case, you can't actually even bring the student in. And it's not just at the university. Even the visa officials, for example, tend to reject students who don't meet the English proficiency requirements. So from that standpoint, that's essentially no go. Now, when it comes down to the GRE, if it's an undergrad program, it doesn't even come in, right? So, some of these requirements are not necessarily waived out. You think about it jointly between the universities. You identify what is the university looking for. If the GRE or the GMAT is required, so be it. But if it is not required, because the students entering undergrad program and then subsequently heading down to the US for the masters, then universities may say, fine, we don't want to really ask for it at this moment because it's essentially a graduate requirement, right? But the students essentially coming in somewhere in the middle of the program to complete the remaining part of the portion in the US. So those are things that can be thought through, but at no point in time is the idea behind these programs to dilute the academic requirements to make it. That's not the purpose. Those are things that the universities should sit together and identify what is that bare minimum requirement that they're looking forward to from candidates. And then we'd work backwards to ensure that the students who are coming into the program essentially meet those requirements.
Mm-hmm.
And
Great,
I think
you.
the point I wanted to kind of dive, just one point more. The point I wanted to bring out over here is that if students won't qualify, they won't make it. So there's no risk to the model from that standpoint. The students are not able to graduate on the Indian leg of the program. For example, there is absolutely, no commitment made to them that they will essentially make it. If they don't qualify, if they don't meet the requirements, there's no reason for the US institutions to kind of take them into the program to complete the last leg there. So I think those things are transparent and straightforward.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I want to kind of weave some of these questions together. Somebody was asking about, so if they partner with Edept, they can, all their degree programs, students get access to all of them. And then another person asked about, who's doing the recruiting? What is the actual student life cycle? So maybe, George, I'll put this to you. So can you talk specifically about, the timeline? What happens? Like, give us the granular level tactical thing that happens.
Well, sure. I think one of the clear things to clarify is that the programs are built around majors, so it's not access to a full institution. I imagine something could be figured out in that case, but oftentimes these integrated, it's an integrated degree program. So a pathway of the past might have been something that was simple so the student could transfer after 1 year and choose whatever they want. Whereas here, when we're talking about an integrated degree program, this is including, it's often the majors that have a prescribed curriculum so that students are making sure they're getting their STEM courses, their high-level sciences and maths. These things are being taught at the necessary level in country so that by the time the student arrives in the US, they are ready to be a well-performing, high-performing junior into whatever degree program we're talking about. Earlier, I talked about cybersecurity or construction management, or if it's psychology, these kinds of majors. So it's not meant to be access to the full portfolio that an institution offers. It is an integrated degree program. As an enrollment manager, this becomes helpful to me because I'm looking at various places for labor market statistics, trying to understand where is their demand. And our partners with edept are talking about, career placements and industry. We're anticipating where is there going to be demand so that we are building a pipeline for students who, like for me as an institution, maybe I'm going to expand a major or expand a concentration, and now I need to have students, knowing that I can have students to fill that major. That's what my partnership with edept is going to help me do. Know that as an enrollment manager, I'm going to start having a reliable pipeline of students with the necessary qualifications in an integrated degree program that I help design with that home institution abroad.
So let's go a little bit deeper because I want to make sure we really get this question answered. Can you walk through the life cycle of a student that is going to work with their institution, edept, and then the host institution in the United States? So I'm a senior in high school in India. What happens to me?
Well, the student may never know that edept exists.
Okay.
So one, to know that. But before I jump in, do either of my colleagues want to take the first pass at responding?
No, Josh, I think you do. You can take
Great.
it up, and I'll add into it.
So when we're partnering with that host institution in the home country, this is a relationship that matters to them. They're invested in having a pathway or an integration with a U.S. institution. So that host institution in the home country is using their full armament of recruitment resources to pull in these students. So while edept may be doing some things on the side to have some presence or helping to encourage, the host institution is doing the active recruitment of the secondary school students in their markets to bring students into their program because they're incentivized for their own reasons with their local governments to have the integrations with or the tie-ups with an institution in the US. So that's all happening through normal organic methods that the local institution is investing in making happen. The student is going to be recruited early on and learn that there's an opportunity for an integrated degree program where they know that they're going to take a slightly different curriculum than maybe some of their other classmates who are going to finish. I'll use cybersecurity. If they're going to do that in country degree program, there's going to be a variance in that curriculum that the student going into an integrated degree program is going to complete because it's going to have courses and modules and curriculum that are intent to fit with the institution they're going to graduate from in the US. So that student knows early on that they have a certain cohort that they are now part of, that they do the first 2 years of that program. If there's some variation, this might be unique to your individual integrated degree program, but presuming they do 2 years in that home country, then that student knows that they've achieved certain benchmarks, certain requirements, that they then will move to the host institution in the US, at which point there isn't a commission or anything, but the host institution is building their capacity to make sure they have enough seats for the students who are coming through this program. And then they follow the rest of the prescribed curriculum as the host U.S. institution offers.
Mm-hmm.
So
Go ahead.
Yeah, just one point maybe to correct there. I think when we start off the journey, usually this is like an adept branded program where both the institutions come in. We take an active role in recruiting the students. It's our counselors who are talking to the students. We are taking care of the minimum requirements for the students to come in. You're right, George, that the university has a big role to play in this as well, because usually when the students come in, there's like a joint panel, and essentially they would also like to know what kind of students are coming in. But for all of these programs, ideally, we would like to own the process of recruitment of the students upfront, just so that we are sure that the right set of students are coming in. And so essentially, we'll co-brand it, but essentially that initial lever of recruitments is with edept. And we work very closely with the institutions, but we would like to, and essentially we would hold that lever of recruitments to begin with in all of these programs.
Great. Thanks for clarifying that. I imagine, because it's so prescribed and the relationship is so mapped out between the Indian university and the U.S. institution, that I, as a student, I would have to know I want to do that even before I enroll freshman year, my first year, right? Because I'd have to make sure I start that prescribed list of classes kind of right away. So I can see why the high school level recruitment and awareness building is really important. We have several other questions here. I want to make sure that we have time for them. So I'm going to kind of rapid fire these two questions, and then we're going to get to a big question that I don't know that any of us can answer. So can you explain, like, what's the role of faculty? What's the demand on faculty, both on the Indian side and on the US side? What would be the ask that the administrators would have to go to faculty to make this happen?
Well, I'll take this one, and George and Puneet, please add in if I've missed something. But I think the first part starts off first by in the program design. For example, we expect the faculty to come in. When the articulations were being worked out, we expect that inputs are given from both sides, both the Indian side and the American side. For example, on what credits are important, what credits are optional. For example, how am I looking, and how long is that, how is that credit going to be mapped? What are the learning outcomes that we're expecting at the end of that particular module? I think all of those inputs come in early, I think, and that's where the faculty comes in first. And then subsequently, if there are modules where let's say the US faculty is coming in on the integrated standpoint in the first 2 years, let's say which are being delivered in India, if they're taking up certain some coursework, then of course they will be teaching those modules. But I think those are the discussions, and again, student assessment and grading the students then becomes the responsibility of the faculty. So I think to that extent, the faculty is definitely going to be involved in the academic work and the pre-academic work, for example, in the program design, and then eventually evaluating year on year and seeing, all right, are the students doing well? How is this program moving? What changes do we need to bring into the curriculum? What changes do we need to bring in? If we feel that there are certain levers that we need to pull or push towards, and I think those are inputs that come in from the faculty, because eventually the outcomes of the students should be great. And I think that the only inputs there can come in from the academicians. So I think that's where the faculty comes.
Okay, great. We're gonna keep going real quickly. And again, the answer might be depends. But if they do this kind of arrangement, are students basically adding on time to their degree program? Is it going to take longer for them to get their bachelor's?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
Great. I love it. Quick and dirty. All right. So let's talk very briefly. We only have a few minutes. And before we get there, thank you everyone for being here and participating in the chat and submitting these great questions. I know that you all probably have a lot more questions and have very specific questions that you want answered related to your institution. And somebody did ask how they can get more information. So Tony added a link in the chat. We'll also make sure I'll add the links to their LinkedIn accounts as well, so you connect with them directly. But this is the time to jump on a Zoom call and actually go through the nitty gritty, specifically your barriers to entry, your opportunities at your institution, because they're going to be different for everybody. So definitely encourage you to reach out and just get that information up front. So yeah. How do you all, and I'm just going to throw it to everybody, how do you all see the current climate, specifically regarding international students in the United States, impacting this type of a partnership?
To my way of thinking, this type of partnership is part of the remedy to what we experience in the climate right now. when, I was recently in India for about 2 weeks. I did visit with our respective embassies and the American Cultural Center in different places. When there's an established relationship, when we have possibly senior administrators or faculty crossing borders around a program like this, and we make the necessary connections with those offices, the visa officers, knowing that there's this relationship, that we're going to see an increase of visas from students going to a particular school because it's part of a specific investment and a partnership and a collaboration. And when there's clarity that those students are truly coming fully with the intent of everything the F1 is intended to be, that is a big part of the remedy, I think.
Yeah. Yes, you guys, you have some, I mean, I know as people looking in on our situation, I would love to hear your thoughts, especially if you have any concerns about students' interest in even pursuing higher education in the United States, especially right now.
I don't think that's changing. There was a newspaper, there was an article in the newspaper that the US visas dates are not available. It's still overly subscribed, and the embassy is trying to figure out what to do with the current fall intake because they don't have any appointment slots to give out to the students.
Okay.
I mean, so at this point in time, despite what we're reading and saying, there is absolutely no change in terms of students' love for pursuing higher education. I think it's only going to grow as we speak about it. And I think the US has always been the number one destination for Indian students, specifically on the tech side. I don't think that's changing either. So from that standpoint, I think it's work as usual or business as usual. I don't think anything is changing out there.
Yeah, and I think one.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, sorry. I wanted to add another point. Maybe this is, my way of thinking, maybe utopian, but I guess, we look at it more from a skills perspective as well. We sort of look at it, as you mentioned earlier, we do look at all of those reports coming out of US, the skill reports, and saying where are the skill gaps and what are the jobs of the future? Where would the jobs be in 2032? And therefore, what should the students be studying right now? And essentially, we're trying to look at that and sort of say that these are the kind of programs that we should create, right? So essentially, what we feel is, if there is a scarcity of certain skill sets, there is a lower likelihood of clampdowns being happening on those specific segments, right? So therefore, when we picked up these three specific domains, such as psychology, construction, and cybersecurity, we sort of, if you look at the commonality between these three, you'd see that there's a lot of jobs which are open. There's a shortage. You do a simple search and you'll see there's a shortfall of people who are required for those kind of positions. And I think we've sort of reverse engineered that demand to say that, okay, let's build in these segments. And I think that's where I think if the hammer is falling, I think that will be the last place it might fall in.
Perfect. I think that's a really great way to close out this conversation. I'm sure there's more to be said, so I hope you all get to say that with some one-on-one conversations with the folks who are here live. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Again, I just want to reiterate, we've dropped several links in the chat, but definitely connect with all of these guys over on LinkedIn. I'm sure they'd love to connect and chat with you there as well. Again, my name is Brooke Roberts. This is the Gateway Spotlight, and thank you all for being here, and we'll see you in the next one.